Yeah,
this
that's what I have.
So we are live now, and I couldn't be happier. This is like always such a happy time for me to get to be with Dr. Kristin Carothers again.
Me too. Hi.
Hi, I do feel like too much time has passed, but lives are busy. Busier,
Yes.
right? Just so
Yes.
busy. Yeah. So how are you doing? We'll wait till we see some people getting on.
Okay. I'm doing well. We're almost a year to the date of when everybody's lives changed in ways that we couldn't imagine. And
Yep.
so I'm just happy to be here and to be talking to you.
Well, so we mark this day because my son got married on March 1st.
Okay.
And so he had an anniversary that everyone remembered. And he's like, am I supposed to remember people's anniversaries? Because I don't. And I'm like, no, you are the day that the world shut down. Everybody at your wedding remembers that as the last thing.
The last event.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get talking about why we're here, which is to talk. We spend so much time talking about our kids, which is appropriate.
Yeah.
But we do have to think about ourselves in this story as parents. And
yes.
The analogy is always the oxygen mask on you first. But there's probably never been a time in most of our lives where it's more important than as this moment. Like most of us have not lived through something for a year, like a crisis for a year. So let's start with the fact that we're all stressed out.
Yes, we are.
And we need help, and you're going to give us help. But let's start with the first question. When our kids see us stressed, our middle school kids and our high school kids, is that good for them or bad for them, or somewhere in the middle?
I think we could say it's somewhere in the middle. First of all, we are human beings. To go through stress is a human process and procedure. It's totally natural. I think one of the things that is hardest is managing our emotional responses in front of our kids when we are experiencing extreme stress or distress. And so when we say, instead of labeling it as good or bad, it is what it is. However, there are times when we would prefer to present more calmly or in a way where we're handling stress well, because when we present that way, we're modeling for our kids how to normally and naturally handle stress and to do so in a way that's productive. And I think sometimes life just gets the best of us and we have the reactions that we have because in the moment, it's hard to stop and think and process about everything that's going on around us and what our kids are seeing and watching. And sometimes we just have our emotions. So for parents, I think we've got to give ourselves a little bit of a break and try to kind of recognize that everybody's stressed out. Our kids are stressed out. We're stressed out. We're doing our best. We can always do better, but in the moment, we're really just doing our best.
So I of course love it because I love everything you say, but I do think that if we could parse it out a little bit, because there's something we tell this all the time. It's good for your kids to see you be human, right?
Right.
So how much of being human starts to be a detriment to our kids? And are there things that we should watch for? Like, we're feeling like, oh, I heard someone say it's good for me to show my anxiety and how I deal with it. But maybe there's a tipping point.
Yeah, there's definitely a tipping point. I think we've always got to be aware that we're modeling for our kids how to react to situations. And we also model without intending to emotional experiences. So if you're a person who's highly anxious and you tend to worry a lot before something happens, even if there's nothing coming up to be worried about, your kids are hearing that thought process, those thought processes that you go through because you typically go through them aloud, or they're watching certain behaviors and they pick up those behaviors. So we have mirror neurons. Our kids have mirror neurons where their brains are wired to mimic our physical behaviors. And so one of the things is we want to be really careful of patterns. So if you've got a pattern of like cursing or exploding when you're going through stress, or you've got a pattern of worrying or overthinking things or constantly reassurance seeking from your partner or from your parents, your kids pick up on that and they watch that and they do that. And so I think parents need to realize kids do what they see, not what they're told to do, right? So if I'm a worrier and I constantly have worried thoughts and I engage in worried behaviors like checking 5 times or questioning my decisions, my kids learn to do that too. If I'm a person who gets into big rages and I curse a lot or lose my temper when I'm stressed, then I'm modeling, okay, you lose your temper when you're stressed. That's what happens. And so that's the point where we want to be really insightful and aware. The other thing that I've heard a lot about is this drinking during the pandemic. And so in Atlanta, where I am, there was an expose on the news about moms who had noticed they'd been drinking more. And so during the pandemic, at some point, they decided, hey, I'm going to be really mindful of how much I drink because I don't want to send my kids the signal that I need to drink to be with them or that I have to drink to cope. And so really being aware of like why we're doing what we're doing is important.
I was reminded as you were talking, like there's always these scenarios in movies and in real life where the kid swears and one of the parents says, where did you learn that word? Right. And it would say, from you. You. Right. And so we're not always as aware of what we're giving off. So what did you call it? Mirror
neurons. So there are these neurons in the brain that as you develop, this is from the ape world, and we as human beings also have these neurons. But what happens is we have specific neurons in the brain. Their function and purpose is to teach us how to be beings, and we replicate what's demonstrated by parents. Okay, so this has been demonstrated in human beings and chimps and other apes as being really functional and important for us to learn social skills, for us to learn daily living skills, etc.
And swearing.
Yes, and swearing.
Okay, so one of the things that when we are our full selves, yes, is this idea that we help our kids understand that they're not alone in something.
Yes.
So how does the scale balance where we're doing that healthy thing of saying, me too, I'm scared and I'm anxious, without fueling what is already out of control for our teenagers?
I think parents need a little special time of their own. Everybody needs some time by themselves to be able to process what they're going through, how they think, and how they feel. And if you don't have that time built into your day, you're going to find yourself just constantly like reacting to scenarios. And so I think practically, we've got to have some time when we're not on, where we're not expected to perform, where we're not trying to meet other people's needs in addition to meeting our work, the demands of our work lives, right? And so having some time during the day or at the end of the day where you say, hey, life is, everything else is closed. I say kitchen is closed and it's mommy time. People need to be in bed. I need quiet. And that the purpose of that quiet is for me to be able to kind of just check in about, why did I make this decision today? How was I feeling when I made the decision? How do I feel now? Were there things that I didn't like that I felt, or that I heard my kids say that I thought, that might be something that I said that now he's parroting? And I apologize if you can hear background noise. He is in virtual school.
Well, it's real life now. It's all about real life.
Yes.
One of the bonuses of Zoom, I think, is that we have done away with the pretense that we are sitting, with a suit jacket and no pants.
Yes,
it's just real life. So I lost what I was going to say, but I love that piece of advice. So let's move into what are the things we can do. Okay. And here's what I was going to say, because it does come back. Not everybody has the space to be alone. Right. So are there ways, everybody can walk outside, right? So that's one thing you could do. But let's say you can't walk outside at that moment and you need your own space. Are there tools that people use?
I do, like, everybody deserves to have at least one time when they can go in the bathroom by themselves and be just, even if people are banging at the door while you're in there, even if it's like, where are you? Like, you deserve 5 minutes of alone time to just kind of just to sit and to breathe and think. I've got the Calm app on my phone. I never use it, but I have friends who meditate daily, and that works for them. I've tried to start some exercise. So carving out some exercise time I've tried to use as my alone time. But if push comes to shove and you've got nothing else, at the end of the day, 5 minutes by yourself.
I love the bathroom. You could always put headphones on and
always put your headphones on and block out the noise. You could always turn the water on and let the water run. Lots of different ways to make that work.
Okay, so I want to take it away from the modeling part of it.
Yes.
We know it's good to deal with stress and have our kids see us deal with stress.
Yes.
But let's just really say, how is it good for us? But at this moment, what are the things that we can do? Meditation, if it works for you. Mm-hmm. Are there any things that during the past year you've been like, I really see people learning how to do this?
Okay, I think social support is really very important right now. And social support is just connecting to a person or a network of people that you identify with, or a person that you identify with who's supportive, who's positive and supportive, or if they're not positive and supportive, they can at least say, I understand how you feel, right? And so one of the things, I keep saying one of the things I think is important, when there are a lot of things that I think is important, but I do really think it's good for people to have check-ins with friends or positively influencing family members. So that check-in can be a FaceTime call. Sometimes you don't even have the energy to do a FaceTime call, but text messaging, it can also be just a regular phone call. But I really think you got to have some time where you check in with like a peer. So not a child, not necessarily a spouse, but just a regular like friend, to say, hey, I just want to talk, or hey, how are you doing? Sometimes hearing about other people's situations can make you feel better than your own. You may feel that you can be helpful. Sometimes you just need to vent, and you can say to your support network, I just need to vent. I don't want advice. Just let me vent. And that can be really helpful.
I also reached out to a friend I'm not in touch with often from my childhood, and we just texted. And I'm telling you, like it was uplifting, like you can't imagine.
Yeah, to like go back to a relationship you haven't had for a while, and to catch up with somebody and find out what's new in their lives can help.
Okay, let's see what Gwen has to say, because I've never heard this one. Is this a thing? I heard drinking a glass of water.
I've never heard it too, but I love it. So drinking a glass of water to change reactions. I think if you think about what happens when you have a glass of water, you got to go, you have to be mindful of the fact that you're drinking, right? So if you're not focused on drinking, you can make some mistakes. And so I wonder if there's something there about like mindfulness and breathing. So you're not breathing while you're drinking, but you're stopping, you're taking a sip of water, you're experiencing, if you can be mindful and experience, is the water cool? Is the water warm? Does it have ice cubes? What does it feel like as you swallow? What are you noticing in your body? It can really slow you down and help you to focus on what's happening right there in that moment, than being focused on the thing you have to do next.
You also can't be screaming while you're taking.
Cannot be screaming, or you'll mess up your shirt. So yes.
Gwen, thank you. I think that's great. This is a funny question, but I'm sure that we've all experienced this, where we're kind of anxious about being anxious.
Yes.
So I think this is a moment in time where things are starting to shift a little bit. We see a light at the end of the tunnel. Some things are reopening. And so, there could be this whole thread of like, do I do this? Don't I do this? I mean, make plans with people, don't make plans with people. They're vaccinated, I'm not. How do we settle ourselves?
Okay, this is very hard for me, because I have some ways in which, as a professional and a person in the medical field, where I say we want to take the best measures to keep everyone as safe as possible. And then I have the Kristin me who is saying, but I'm about to lose it. I just need to see people. I got to get out of here. I don't want to look at this place anymore. Can I just do something? And so I think middle ground as much as possible, and focusing on trusting your gut. So that is not scientific, right? But I think we all have some intuition, and we have some common sense. And so there are some common sense things that we can do to alleviate our anxiety. If there are some best practices that have been proposed, use the best practices. and at the same time have some flexibility. If you have to see somebody and they haven't been vaccinated or you haven't been vaccinated, follow CDC guidelines for how to do that. If you all have both been vaccinated, follow the medical experts guidelines for how to do that. I'll admit, sometimes I think the medical experts are changing the guidelines very rapidly, and it makes me feel anxious and unsure of what I can believe. But my coping thought in those times is, this is the best we have right now. So I'm making this decision based on the best information that I have right now. Could that information change next year? Yes. However, we were doing our best in this moment. So even when it came to being vaccinated, I am vaccinated. I am also Black. And in the beginning, I had no interest in taking the vaccine because of my healthy cultural paranoia about vaccines and experimentation with Black people. Then working in a medical field, I got the opportunity to take the vaccine. And I thought to myself, I'm being given this opportunity. Not many people have it. Perhaps I need to just try this out. So my gut was saying, try it. I tried it. I did both shots, and I'm on the other side of it. Now, I always have this little thought in the back of my head, what about if 5 years from now they find out there was something with the shot? Or what if you had just not taken the shot and then you would have been better? So those anxious thoughts are always there in the background, but I'm trying to kind of push forward past them because there's nothing I can do about 5 years from now. All I have is what I'm focused on right now, which is making it out of the house and making it through daily activities.
Yeah, it's so helpful to hear from someone who's in the profession how you're also struggling with it. So Lori, thanks for jumping in today. Her morning coffee and late night checking Facebook is your downtime. I think that's such an important thing to put out there. It doesn't work for everybody. For some people, it brings them down, but you check in on each other, and it's great for venting and compassion. That is really, really nice. Really lucky.
I love that. I'm doing the morning coffee and trying to do a lot of whitening toothpaste afterwards, because coffee really was something I looked forward to with the pandemic, was to be able to make my own coffee and have a really good cup before I got my day started. With the Facebook on the end of the day, what I had to do was make sure that I wasn't then not going to bed because I'm so excited by what I'm seeing on Facebook. I had to let TikTok go because I could lose hours. But between Facebook and Instagram, I agree. It's nice to check in on friends that way.
Lovely. Thanks, Lori. So as things start opening up, I think there's always this careful what you wish for. You can't wait for your kids to go back to school, but you've been deeply enmeshed in a schedule that required you to be on a lot for many parents.
Yes.
And so, when those kids leave and go to school, you might be left with a little bit of loneliness and a little bit of new anxiety.
Yes, a little bit of separation anxiety. I was most worried about kids having separation anxiety at the start of the pandemic. I thought, if this goes on, kids aren't going to want to leave home. It's going to be really hard. And on the flip side, it will probably be a bit of a challenge for parents. So now we all kind of think, oh, as soon as I get my time back, I'll be great. I'll be more productive. I'll be able to work. I'll have more me time. And I think in some ways we will miss them and miss the routines that we started to have. So the first time ever that I would sit down to breakfast with my son on a daily basis. I never had that before the pandemic. And now that's something that I've had in this last year. And that's going to change when he goes back to school. So I think one of the things to remember is I think we'll be shifting in and out of the kids being in school, being out of school, being in school, being out of school, until we really know what's happening with COVID-19. And so that's one of, I think, a coping forward thought is, we don't know for sure that they'll just be back, fully back. There may be times when we're doing this kind of dance where, okay, they're back for 10 days. Okay, they're going back next week. They're back for 10 days. They're home for, maybe they don't have to do 10 days anymore. So we're just going to have to be really flexible.
Yeah. So if flexible is not your biggest strength, which
yes.
I have to raise my hand here, I would say that, like, that unpredictability, not to use the word too much, it can create its own set of anxieties for people who like routine.
Yes. And so that's really hard. And it's actually a good intervention for people who are anxious, because it teaches you to tolerate distress. So typically people who are extremely anxious, prepare or over prepare because they want to avoid distressing or uncomfortable situations. Well, anxiety only gets worse if you are always able to avoid situations that make you distressed or uncomfortable, right? So this unpredictability puts us in a position where we don't have a choice but to learn to tolerate discomfort, which can in the long term possibly decrease anxiety. So it is counterintuitive, but it could be that we shift our thinking and we say, okay, this next year is going to be really unpredictable. I'm going to use this unpredictability or this difficulty as a way for me to work on going with the flow and saying, I don't have control over this moment. I've just got to do my best. Okay. And the more that we can practice that, we might find ourselves calmer in the long run. And there are lots of benefits to being calm, like higher life satisfaction, ability to actually enjoy experiences. So maybe we can think of this as an experiment for those of us who are anxious as a way to kind of lower our anxiety.
It's so interesting because I am a big planner. And I have kids who grew up in a house where there was a lot of planning. And I see how hard it is for them when they're traveling or doing something with people who don't need that very scheduled planning. And it all comes down to the risk of not having control over it. So it is exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
It's trying to get a hold of control.
Yes.
And so it does create its own set of anxiety, but I don't know how you backpedal that one.
I don't know how you backpedal it either.
Kristin.
No, I don't know how you do it. I think you got to have like a friend or a partner who can tolerate like not knowing what the plan is, so that they can then model for you like how to go with the flow and baby step it. Like, so if you're planning a vacation or you're planning something, there are some things that you need to plan. Like if you are leaving and going somewhere, you need to plan to take a COVID test. You need to plan to have masks. You need to plan to have a contingency if you're exposed, right? But then once you get on the trip, maybe you could practice, or once you get on the outing or whatever you got going on, perhaps you say, well, let's go with the flow and see what happens. What's the worst thing that can happen? Is always like what a cognitive behavioral therapist is asking people when they're anxious. What is the worst thing that can happen? And so if you tap into like what you think the worst thing is that can happen, and then try to figure out, is there a high chance that that's going to happen? You'll likely figure out that the chances that that awful thing will happen are low. Can awful things happen? Yes. And the likelihood of that happening could be low. And if it's high, and if the awful thing happens, can you move forward? You know?
Well, also, a lot of times the things that are awful, if you would let your head go to what would be the worst thing, you don't have
never go.
You're never going to have control over that. It doesn't matter how many plans you set in place, and things happen. Like, stuff happens.
Yes.
So Christine says, that is a great way to look at the unpredictability. Thank you. Thanks, Christine. Okay. Any parting words?
Parting words. Good job, everyone, for doing your best this year. We've been through like traumatic grief. We've been through loss of like the way life was before. People have lost family members and friends, jobs. I think this has been a year where we've gotten to see like what's really important in life. And so if we could kind of just focus on being with the people we love and appreciating them fully, it'll teach us a lot about how to run this race. So thank you for having me.
Oh, Kristin, so great every single time. Thank you so much.